Back. We've had a couple of technical difficulties today, but it's okay. We're going to start right from the top. I think it just will help with the flow of things. If you were a part of the last 5 minutes that were recorded, then you'll probably hear some things again. But hopefully, we can make it on through. All right, so the first thing I started off with in the last live stream was that at the end of this lesson, we are going to have a Zoom chat on Patreon. So the link will go up probably 30 minutes in, like, toward the end of the lesson, like within the last 30 minutes, and the people can go and sign up. I don't know where we're going to cap it, but we're going to try to get as many people into the conversation as possible, because we're going to cover a lot of ground and a lot of information today, and I want to be able to kind of debrief or kind of unfold some of the things. I know people have questions, comments they want to share, so we'll do it all there so that we can push through, because I am not necessarily a time constraint, but I know Moray is going to go live, and we're trying to make it so that you guys don't have to shuffle between both live streams. All right, so just a little background. Saul is pursuing David. David is running. He has taken his family into Moab so that they can be safe until he figures out, as he said, what will come of everything. And in 22, Saul kills the priest of Yah who helped David. A small army has formed with David. There are people who have joined with him. And the next chapter opens up at a very, very significant place. It opens up at the threshing floor. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with what a threshing floor is, but if not, we're going to go ahead and talk about what that is just very briefly so we get some context as to what's happening. So a threshing floor in the Hebrew is a goren, and it's spelled Gimel, Resh, Nun. And the threshing floor is a place where the grain that's gathered would be placed on the ground, and a mill is set up, and the oxen would tread the mill in order to burst open the seed and release the edible part, and then they would winnow what was left, and the wind would carry away what wasn't edible. Okay, so the threshing floor is also seen as a place of worship, because when we go into worship, or when we are going through our process, the same thing is happening. We're taken, and the ox, in the spiritual sense, is Yah, is then pressing out or breaking us from the outside hardened parts of ourselves to reveal the seed or the life. And so it's very interesting that this opens up in chapter 23 with David literally defending the threshing floor, because he's going through his own spiritual threshing. Yah is breaking David, if you will, in a lot of ways, and revealing the character and the life and the inner seed of David, because it's necessary for what he's going to have to do to be the king that Yah is going to require him to be. Okay, so the title of this lesson today is called Doing It for the Call or for the Clout. And there's 3 parts to this lesson. That's why I told you it might be a little lengthy, because each part deals with a person having to come face to face with their call, and other people coming face to face with wanting the clout. And there constantly being a balance, if you will, of those, that dichotomy, of that duality, the part of us who wants power, and the part that is constantly submitting and humbling itself to the call. So let's jump right into it. So 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 1. Then they told David, saying, Behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they rob the threshing floors. So why is it significant that they're robbing the threshing floors? Because the threshing floor is a place where they have done the work. All the work has been done. The seed has been revealed. And if they're doing grain, they're getting ready to make flour and bag it up and then be able to distribute it for life. And so the Philistines are acting like the grasshoppers on A Bug's Life, where they come in, and right before the ants are getting ready to gather, they're taking their portion first. And so you can see how this could be something that Yah would not only be agitated with, but what David would be agitated with. Okay? So verse 2. Therefore David inquired of Yah, saying, Shall I go and smite the Philistines? And Yahuwah said unto David, Go and smite the Philistines and save Keilah. So David does not act in his own power. David knows that he's chosen. David knows he's anointed. David knows that he has the might and the power to defeat the Philistines, but he doesn't just do it and act upon his own will. He inquires of Yah. He asks Yah or requests from Yah if it's okay to do that particular, to do this particular deed. Because don't forget, Saul is still king. And so in David moving, he's making sure that he's moving circumspect to Yah. And he's not saying, oh, I know I'm king, so I'm going to start acting like king right now. No, there's a process and a transition. And his wisdom is making him aware of that. So he inquires. The word is Saul, and it means to inquire, to request leave, or to request movement. So in this case, he's requesting to move upon the Philistines, not for himself, because David can be like, look, I'm running too. I got other stuff to worry about, but his heart is moved for the people because of what's happening, and he is wanting to do something about it. Okay, so this shows us right off the bat that there are checks and balances within the Hebrew culture. The king is not all-powerful, the priest is not all-powerful, but Yah is. So in a general term, this is called a theocracy, where everything goes through through Elohim, okay? And so Yah has the final say on everything. We can want to do things, we can want to move in particular ways, but we are to yield our movement to Yah, right? So we can be moved by anger, by fear, by righteousness, and have zeal, but there's still that check and balance to make sure that we're not acting democratically. We're like, let's all vote. Do you all think we should go? Yeah, and then we go and we get our butts kicked. No, we want to make sure that we have Yah on our side, because David understood that Yah fights the battles and he gives the victory. Okay, so in verse 3, it says, and David's men said unto him, behold, we be afraid here in Judah. How much more if we come to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? He said, man, so he's all zealous, like, okay, we're going to go out, I'm going to ask Yah. Yah says, yes, let's go. And they're like, man, we are running from somebody right now. If we're running from somebody, what makes you think that we're even ready to go out and fight the Philistines? We're running from Saul right now. Like, we have two enemies at us. And his men come in, and which is not bad, but he's like, He doesn't disregard what they say. He doesn't brush it off. But he does do the process of strengthening them in their fear. And so David didn't rely on himself. He didn't say, man, y'all know I'm David. You know who I am, right? You don't think I know Yah? You don't think that I heard him? What he does is so much more humble and noble. And what he does is he inquires of Yah again. So it says that in verse 4, then David inquired of Yahuwah yet again. And Yahuwah answered him and said, arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into thine hand. David doesn't ask for them to rely on his clout. He asked them to rely on the call and to be obedient to what Yah said to do. And it's so interesting because they had already dealt with a leader who was doing things in his own accord, which is Saul. And the people needed to be rest assured that he's not doing the same thing. He's not just getting zealous and he's just not acting in his own strength. So David brings them in a lot of ways into his prayer room and says, let's all get on one accord then. I'll go back to Yah, taking your concerns to the Father and seeing if the answer still is the same. And David was okay with the process of proving his devotion to Yah and to the people of Judah at this time, but then all of Israel. The men also showed a very extreme amount of character as well, because they were not into it for the clout. They were not following David because they were like, oh, you know what, we don't really like Saul, so we're gonna roll with David. No, they actually saw something in Saul when he killed those priests, and in a lot of ways that put them in a position to say, we don't trust the person that's in place, and we know that the person in place is not operating under the will of Yah. But they weren't just getting ready to bandwagon behind David. They weren't joining him for the clout, like, oh, we're going to get behind him so we can be close to him when he become king. No, they were like, you make sure you heard Yah too. And so the men were not in it with David for the clout, but they were in it with him for the call. And this shows it right here in verse 5. So David and his men went to fight and fought with the Philistines and brought away their cattle and smote them with a great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. So in part 1, we get our first call, clout, comparison. It's not the cloud of man, but it's the call of Yah that brings power. And that power is what these men responded to, and Yah brought a great victory through the hand of David for the inhabitants of Keilah. Okay? Verse 6. And it came to pass, when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David to Keilah, that he came down with an ephod in his hand. And it was told Saul that David was come to Keilah. And Saul said, Elohim hath delivered him into mine hand, for he is shut in by entering into a town that has gates and bars. First, we're going to look at this ephod. So Abiathar, remember, is the son of Ahimelech. And he was slaughtered along with 80 other priests and the whole priestly village by the hand of Doeg the Edomite, by the commandment of Saul. Okay? And so when Abiathar comes and he flees to David, he comes and he brings the ephod, right? So the reason why we were kind of hung up over the past couple of weeks and we didn't have a 1 Samuel lesson is because there's something very interesting that's going to happen here, and I didn't really understand it. And so earlier this week, in prayer and meditation, I just was like, okay, I'll just get online, we'll move forward, and I'll just tell them, I just don't know. And I prayed about it, I was like, yeah, I don't know, I don't understand exactly what this ephod has to do in this particular situation, especially when it comes to the inquiry of David. And so I was like, I'll just admit to the people that this is something that may be hidden, we don't know, and we'll kind of move forward and we'll leave room to talk and discuss that. And last night we were sitting at the table and I was looking over my notes, I was getting ready for this, and the Most High just opened up the text. So I'm going to give you a little background on what the ephod is, just in case you're not sure. So the ephod, we get a very detailed description of the ephod in Exodus chapter 28 and 29. And it's a garment, or a part of a garment, worn by the priest. And the garment has, it's a chest plate, and it has straps that are attached to the rest of the garment. And the chest plate has all the stones for the 12 tribes. Has 2 stones on the shoulders where the names of the 12 tribes are written. And in it, it holds 2 stones, the Urim and the Thummim. And in past studies, and I've heard it done, I've heard people mysticize or make it mystical, I'm making up words, making the ephod a mystical thing that has this power, because stones have power. And as I was sitting and as I was reading, the Most High said the ephod, and nothing essentially has any power of its own. But in the text, it literally tells us what the purpose of the ephod is. So let's just look at that very briefly, because I'm going to show you the comparison between when David prays in the first 5 verses, and then when he prays again, and he calls Abiathar in these next verses to bring the ephod into the equation of inquiring of Yah. So in Exodus chapter 28, verse 30, we'll actually start at verse 29. It says, And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, when he goeth into the holy place for a memorial before Yahuwah continually. And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before Yahuwah. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before Yahuwah continually. So the answer to the question of, does the ephod have any inherent power of its own? The answer is absolutely not. It is worn as a memorial. It's worn as a reminder of who you're doing it for. You're not doing it for the clout, Aaron. You're doing it for the call. And the call is to serve Israel, the 12 tribes. You're going to wear it on you. So when you step into this place, you're not stepping in just for yourself, but you're stepping in as a representation of the whole nation of people who I've called you to serve over. I'm pretty sure your brains are turning because you're like, okay, David, just mentioned ephod. So yes, you're on the right path. Okay, so it's a memorial and it's for judgment. Saul here, right, knows that David's in Keilah, and he's like, oh, Yah has put him in my hand. Yah has done it. And it's like, wait, you just killed Yah's priest, yet you're still acting like Yah is blessing you and doing this thing because you are convinced that David is your enemy. Just right before this, though, David just prayed to Yah, and Yah gave him the ability to save the people from the Philistines. Saul is so consumed with David that the Philistines are literally wreaking havoc within the territories of Israel, Benjamin, Judah, and Israel, and he's not doing anything about it. But he's laser zoomed in on an enemy that's not even his enemy, and you can see how anger and pride and jealousy can just blind you from what you're supposed to be doing. So he still has the power, but the call is gone. The anointing is gone, and he's acting in his own strength and power. Okay, so it says, he says that he's shut in, he's in a town, there's gates and bars. Oh, this is perfect. Yah set this up great. So verse 8, and Saul called all the people together to war, to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. And David knew that Saul secretly practiced mischief against him, and he said to Abiathar the priest, bring hither the ephod. So, this is where we're going with this ephod. And I'll go back to the beginning. So he says, bring hither the ephod. Then David said, O Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, thy servant hath certainly heard that Saul seeketh to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as thy servant hath heard? O Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, I beseech thee, tell thy servant. And Yahuwah said, he will come down. Then said David, will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul? And Yahuwah said, they will deliver thee up. So in the first few verses, and this is why we had a little pause on our lessons, in the first few verses, David prays, right? And Yah just answers him. He's like, should I go out and fight the Philistines? And Yah's like, go out and fight the Philistines. And he says, the men were unsure, prays again. Yah says, go out and fight the Philistines. I'm going to bring them into their hand. And it didn't necessitate the intercession, if you will, of Abiathar or the ephod, for that matter. But in this case, there necessitated a mediator or a go-between. And so where I was kind of stuck was, I was like, is he praying and seeing if the ephod is going to help change, or help not change, but help give the answer or amplify his prayer? And Yah showed me that's not what it was. David asked for the ephod because the ephod acts like a judgment between one thing and another. So when the ephod was given to the priest, the ephod acts as the judgment, or the word I'm looking for is, it acts as a reminder, right? It's for memorial. It acts as a reminder of what I'm doing this for. And so if I'm not doing it for this, so in the priest case, if I'm not Aaron, if I'm not doing it for these 12 tribes and for the call you've called me to, then I shouldn't be doing it. So when I put this on, I'm putting it on with the intent that if I'm not doing it for the right reasons, you will kill me. Think of Hophni and Phinehas, right? Or, yeah, that's a perfect example. Think of them, where you're doing something and you're in this office, but you're self-serving. When you put that on, it should be the reminder. When the heart is hard and desensitized, then the person wearing it then puts themselves in a position to be killed. So one of the things that happens is the priest has to wear bells and certain things. He has to have a rope tied around him, especially when he goes in when he operates as the high priest and goes into the Holy of Holies. Because if he puts that on, you do all this, you put this garb on and you stand, and that heart is not right, then we got to pull you out by a rope, because you're going to die when you step into this place. So it was this thing of putting yourself under the ultimate test of judgment and introspection. And so when David asked for the ephod, remember, he has to be constantly checking himself as he's fleeing from Saul. Because he's like, I got an army, and if they come, like, I can fight. You know, he could have to be running these things to his head, but David doesn't even go into that place. He goes, bring the ephod, because I don't have Saul here, so that Yah can judge between him and me. So I need the ephod here to judge me as I come and stand before Yah and ask him what I'm supposed to do next. I need to be clear and sure, because in my own mind and of my own might, I may want to fight for myself. I may want to defend myself. I may want to trust that the men of Keilah are not going to give me up because I just fought the Philistines for them. But the reality is I can't trust in anybody but you, Yah. So I need you to judge me, judge the situation, and know that I'm doing this not for myself, but for Israel. This is how we know that we're doing it for Israel. that he was doing it for Israel, because David, when he speaks, he says, right here, he says, then David said, will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul? And Yah said, they will deliver thee up. And right before that, he said, will Saul come down as thy servant hath heard? And what David's most afraid of is what he mentions in verse 10, which is, he says, then David said, O Yahuwah of Israel, thy servant hath certainly heard that Saul seeketh to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. David is triggered right now. David has a trauma. David went to Nob, and all the priests and all the children and all the suckling and all the women died because he was there. So if the men are now coming into Keilah, where he just put his life on the line, because anytime you go out to battle, you're putting your life on the line. He did it for the love of it. He didn't do it for the clout. When he defended that threshing floor and got the Philistines out, he did it for the love of the people. And so he has put his life on the line, and he's saying, now Saul's getting ready to come here and kill all these people too? Like, is he coming here because what am I going to do? Am I going to defend the people against Saul? Or what do I do next? But then when he says, are the men of Keilah going to give me into Saul's hand? It's like, okay, they're going to bargain for me. So then it's like, okay, do I give myself up? Is this it for me? What do I do? He doesn't know what to do, because there's so many intricate variables here, that, and so many lives on the line. His own men's lives, the people and the women and the children of the city, himself and the call. He's like, I don't know what to do. So he inquires of Yah, and he asks Yah to judge. So David puts on the ephod not for an amulet, but as a way to judge him, to know that that what he wants to do is best for Israel. And we get the clue when he asks about the people. He wasn't concerned with his life, but with the life of the people of Keilah. And because of the trauma of Abiathar's family and the priests, he would rather give his life instead of losing others. And he was going to bear, by putting on the ephod, the judgment of the people. He was going to bear the people on his shoulders. And it shows that part of David, that he is the beloved, and he is represented as a type of Messiah, because Messiah bore the infirmities of the same people that handed him over. You go into the New Testament, you think about how Messiah had been there healing, he had been there teaching, he'd been there feeding. And when it came down to it, after he'd done all that, the people were like, yeah, give us Barabbas and take him. There's always that place of having to exchange ourselves for the people when it comes to serving Yah. And David understood that full and well. Oh, man. Okay, so what happens next? In verse 13 it says, then David and his men, which were about 600, arose and departed out of Keilah and went whithersoever they could go. So they just scattered. And it was told Saul that David was escaped from Keilah, and he forbore to go forth. So he was like, all right, he's out of there. Oh, well, okay, well, let's next best thing, right? So he didn't destroy Keilah because David fled. Can you imagine if David would have just said, okay, I'm staying here? Then Saul would have came with his army, and then all those people would have been considered conspiring against Saul, and they would have killed him. Sometimes fleeing is the best thing to do. Fleeing for the sake of the seed, fleeing for the sake of the promise, fleeing for the sake of the call. So David leaves, and Saul's like, all right, we now even go down there. He ain't there no more. Let's figure out where he went. And by David being wise and not staying and fighting, or not staying and trying to defend the people of Keilah, or not staying and having them have to turn them over, he leaves, and it kind of abates Saul's wrath at the time. It kind of appeases it a little bit. So he's like, okay. All right. So verse 14. And this is the beginning of part 3. And David abode in the wilderness in strongholds, meaning he was hiding out in caves. He was hiding out in high places, right? So David's a man of military. A stronghold is a place that's prepared where you can look out and see what's happening below you. So he has to he has to be tired. He got to be tired of running. And he's not running like now where you stop at a 7-Eleven and grab something. Like, he's running in wilderness, and he's running in a land that is, very much alive at the time. It doesn't look as much as it looked like right now. So you have hills and mountains. If you've never been to the land, I'll give you some kind of background of it. There are valleys and places where it's flat, but when you're going through that land, especially the land of Judah in certain areas, it's very hilly. And you're going through hills and mountains and trees, and there's a lot going on. And so he's in a stronghold, which means he's sitting in a high place. He's kind of like looking and watching, just, keeping his head level, seeing what's going on. And remained in a mountain in the wilderness of Ziph. So here you go, mountain. He's able to look and see. He's perceiving. He can act ahead. Nothing's really sneaking up on him, if you understand me. Yah's providing these places where he can be aware of what's happening. And Saul sought him every day, but Yah delivered him not into his hand. So Saul is going all over, right? And you imagine an army. Just imagine 600 people going anywhere. Saul has way more than 600 people. So imagine Saul and his men. I mean, it's not going to be a hard thing to spot. When I was in Israel, I did a hike up to the top of, what was it? Why is the thing leaving my head? Oh, I can't think of it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we got up early in the morning and we went to, does anybody remember what that was? Masada. Went up to Masada. Masada's a high place, and it was a fortress. And it was super high. It took us a couple of hours to get up there. And when you get up there, though, you can see far. Like, you can see all the nooks and crannies. You can see, it's right on the same side of Israel where the Dead Sea is. So it's up high, and you can look out, and you can see craters. You can see where water was. But you can see why they picked that high place in that fortress, because you could see out very, very far. So just think of a place like that. Okay, so David saw that Saul was come out to seek his life. He literally could see him. You don't realize when you're in a high place how far out you can see. You can see very, very far, especially even though people are small when you're up high, a multitude of people can be seen. Okay, so he saw that Saul was come to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in a wood. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David into the wood and strengthened his hand in Yah. This is, this part just moved my whole soul. So this is part 3, Jonathan visits David. So imagine what a mighty warrior Jonathan was, right? One, Jonathan never forgot David. That's just imperative from the beginning. It needs to be known. But everybody's looking for David, and guess what? Jonathan knows where he is. Jonathan was and would have been a wonderful king. We can never let that go unmentioned. He would not only have been a captain over Yah's army, but he had the skill and the mindset and the obedience and the wisdom to be in that position. Okay? And Jonathan knows where David is. Before cell phone, before GPS, he knows. He has they are so, I don't even know if it was so much their connection, but clearly they must have thought a lot alike. And that's probably why remember, Jonathan's older than David. Jonathan's like, I like you. You real cool. Because they were on this level where they vibed. And so Jonathan goes to where David is. Crazy, right? His father, he's with his father as he's pursuing, right? Because he's still with his father. But he dips off and goes and's like, I know where David is. He doesn't tell his dad. He doesn't say, hey, I know where David is. He doesn't give him up. He's not like, man, I'm so tired of chasing after David. He's like, nope. I have this loyalty and this honor thing that I'm working through right now, but to my father, but I still am very much in covenant, as they have made that covenant to protect David, because I know what Yah has for him. So Jonathan knows exactly where David is, and instead of letting his father know and breaking the covenant, he goes to David and strengthens him in Elohim. Let's read it. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David into the wood and strengthened his hand in Elohim. And he said unto him, fear not, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find thee, and thou shalt be king over Israel. And I shall be next unto thee, and that also Saul my father knoweth. And they two made a covenant before Yahuwah, and David abode in the wood, and Jonathan went to his house. Jonathan is a friend for the call and not for the clout. Jonathan could have easily been like, all right, we just get rid of David and I can be king. Then I'll have the power. Or he could have said, you know what, David, just give yourself up. I'm going to put you in a dungeon, and I'm going to act like I'm going to do something with you, and then my father's going to make me king, and then I'll work all this stuff out with you. He's like, no, this is David's call. I said I was going to support David on his call, and that even meant going out, finding him, and strengthening his hand in Yah. Right? Leaders get weak. It's the reality of the call. The clout, nope. A true leader doesn't care about the clout because we're often in so much turmoil that I can't even worry about the clout as much as I have to worry about the burden of the call. And so Jonathan, as a friend, understood that. He's like, you know what? I could just nod. I could just let David be. But something about his friend and knowing what he had went through, he knew what happened with with Ahimelech, Abiathar's father and the priest. He knows that his father's pursuing him. He's sure of it that David is probably hungry. He's probably still trying to figure things out. And he probably thinks that everybody who cares about him has forgotten. You don't have a cell phone. You're not on the battlefield like now where we can call home. And no, he doesn't have anybody who really, really understands the intricate details of everything that's happening. He has the 600 men who are rocking with him, and he's grateful, right? He's still doing the work, but sometimes you just need somebody who knows you and knows your call to come in and reaffirm that things are just going to be okay. Leaders need people. I'm not talking about like a group of people, but a person. Every leader has one. Elijah had Elisha, right? David has Jonathan. And even with all the things that are going on, Jonathan understands his mind hasn't changed on what his call was. When he gave David his sword and all of his gear that established who he was as the next in line, he never backed off of that. And he constantly kept reaffirming to David that I know why I'm in your life. And I'm not even going to spoiler alert it for you, but Jonathan's end is not what we would have hoped it to be. Jonathan's whole life, if you will, is surrounding his friendship with David. That's the only reason why Jonathan's even really mentioned in the text. Because he has a disposition and a heart for Yah. And that heart for Yah linked him with who Yah calls a man after his own heart. Like that's what Yah decided to do. And it is why Jonathan is remembered so greatly. He has battles and he does things and he brings, salvation to Israel on more than one account. But at the same time, it is where his character is highlighted in his friendship to David in spite of his father's hatred for David. And so Jonathan is considered a friend in the time of adversity. And it's rare, but Jonathan stood by his oath and his covenant even in the midst of battle. They're at war. Jonathan didn't just show up, but he came with a word. And so often, people show up for the clout. They show up because it's like, I know where David is. Let me go check in on him. And sometimes their showing up can be the same thing that gets you killed. The same thing that exposes you. They want to be in proximity as a way of pseudo showing their devotion. But in showing their devotion, it exposes you. Right? So he doesn't come with just for the sake of seeing David. I mean, I'm just trying to check on you, see how you doing with all this stuff that's going on around here. I'm just trying to see. No, that was not his thing. He didn't even really ask David. He came on mission, and the mission was to strengthen him in Yah's word. And I put in all caps in my notes, what a friend. Because sometimes in the midst of turmoil, the furthest thing from us is being able to latch on to just and remember, what am I in this for? Why am I even doing this? And we do that. I know I do. I go in my head and I'm like, why am I even doing this? Clearly, it ain't working out the way I planned for it to do. And maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. And maybe all this is happening because there's something seriously wrong with me. And maybe I need to go back to the drawing board. And I'm sure David, and I'm going to show you, David's head was in a lot of those same places. Like, why are my enemies pursuing me? Why is this happening? Why am, and not questioning necessarily Yah, but trying to figure out, am I hearing Yah correctly in all of this? And Jonathan shows up as a friend but also a friend who's the son of the enemy and comes and confirms. He reminds him of who he is going to be. Jonathan sees David the way that Yah sees David. Jonathan immediately, when he first met him, like, this young cat, okay, I see you, but I don't see you for how it can benefit me, because Jonathan could have said, hey man, when I'm king, to have a guy like you on my side, Jonathan was like, no, that's the king. And to have a guy like me by his side, to be a friend to him is to be a friend to Yah. And Jonathan saw that. And so he reminds him of the promises of Yah. And when we seem to lose our way, those are the things we need to be reminded of. Jonathan is a friend who is sure of David's call. So a friend in adversity, in Proverbs 17:17 and Proverbs 18:24, we'll read these. But he's a friend who is sure of his call and can guide him when he has lost his way or when he's lost the power. Because when you've lost the power, there is a power in the call, but when the power is weakened by adversity, then there has to be the strengthening of the person with the call, reminding, what are you here to do? Who are you here to be? And that thing needs to be brought back to remembrance, and that's exactly what Jonathan did. A friend is one who is sure of not only the friend's calling, but also their places in one another's life. And it's so imperative because it may be ministering to that friend to resurrect them back onto their journey. Because, for David, I'm just going to hide till Saul died. If David was anything like me, that's what I would have did. I'm like, look, I'm just going to wait it out. I'm done. I'm tired. I'm going to wait out my enemy. And Jonathan's like, no, remember what your call is. Remember what we've talked about. Remember what we've experienced, and bringing all those things back to that person's remembrance to bring them back onto that path. I'm probably going to embarrass this person a little bit, but when I was going through my little hissy fit just last year and on and off a few times throughout the year, Z actually messaged me, and she told me, she said, I don't know this person but what I do know is what I saw when I first came across you, and reminded me of what Yah had called me to do, who I was supposed to be in Yah, and shared that she was faithful, that in being a person around and praying and sticking to her call, but in understanding what that was in how Yah, I guess, brought it to her eyes, that she'll be here to encourage because it's not done yet. Time's not up yet. And that meant a lot to me at that time. It took me a while to still get out my feelings, but to know and to understand that somebody not only saw me as I am, but also saw I was, but also knew that there was still more to be done, and to encourage that. like, no, you just scratching the surface of what the Father has for you. Keep going. Like, if it helped me, then I know you can help other people in doing what you're called to do, and don't get discouraged. Like, and she said something along the lines like, I hope, like, and she's like, it breaks my heart. I hope this is not it. Like, because it can't be, because there's still so much more work to be done. Time is not wrapped up. You're not done. You're still here. You still have more work to do. And so that leads me into, I guess, the two verses I have. It Proverbs 17:17. And it says, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Okay, that's the first one. The next one is Proverbs 18:24. And it says, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Jonathan was that friend. He and David had both been in a position, and David had not yet really been in a position to show Jonathan the kindness and the friendship that Jonathan had shown him in his in his struggle. Okay, so they made a covenant. And oftentimes we think somebody made a covenant that they wrapped it up and they wrote something up and they agreed. But a covenant is actually, a berith is actually food. It's a meal. It's to come together over a meal. That's why people like me, I do not eat with people I don't like. I just don't. And it could be the part of me that's a little gangster from my parents. But I don't. And the reason why is food is very social. And it's person I'd rather eat soup with somebody that loves me than steak with a snake. Right? And for Jonathan to come and to bring provision, he not only fed him spiritually and gave and strengthened him, but he also brought him physical food and sat down and communed with him and probably heard his woes and what he was going through, and like, all right, let's get it back together. You got this, man. You got this. Let me strengthen you in but also remind you that you do have people out there. And what's kind of funny, and this is just me eisegeting, it means thinking in my imaginative eye, but to bring food, it means that Jonathan had to bring it from Saul's he had to bring food from the provisions that were made, that Saul would have made for his army. And he brought it from within the camp to David without the camp to strengthen him to keep on moving. That's the plan. So this reminds us that they were both also constantly reaffirming their friendship, and it was more than likely a meal. And sometimes a friend who goes to great length to prepare a meal and a word from Yah is all we need to move forward on the battlefield. All right, so last part. All right, so they made a covenant. Verse 18. Then came up the Ziphites to Saul to Gibeah, saying, doth not David hide himself with us in the strongholds in the woods? Like, dang! Can't catch a break. Okay, with the strongholds in the wood and the hills of Keilah, which is on the south of Yeshimon. And now therefore, O king, come down according to all the desire of thy soul, to come down, and our part shall be to deliver him into the king's hand. So you always have a person, Yah's doing one thing on this end, and the enemy is moving with a ferocious vigor on the other end. The men are like, hey, for the clout, right? Hey, we know where he is. What you gonna do? What you gonna do for us? Hey, what we gonna do for you is we're gonna bring him into your hand. So Saul is already known, if you have been following this, as a person who rewards people for stuff. Everybody says, is David going to give you vineyards? Is David going to give you fields? Is David going to give you, he's like, I got power. I got clout. Is he going to give you all this stuff? They don't care about the calls. The men are like, all right, we want to be on Saul's good side. Like, we also don't want to get killed, being on his bad side. So they come to him and he says, hey, we know where he is, right? And verse 21, and Saul said, blessed be ye of Yahuwah, for ye have compassion on me. Compassion on you? You're literally here trying to kill a man who hasn't done anything, and you're using Yah's name in vain. It's a perfect example of that. The idea of using Yah's name in vain is taking upon Yah's name and doing the complete opposite with it. You're acting like Yah is blessing you in doing the evil that you're doing. When you know you're wrong, he knows he's wrong when he made up his mind. This is what he's going to do. So many times people using Yah as the buffer between their wickedness sends people in a tizzy. They're like, okay, why would this person be saying Yah said to do this if Yah didn't tell them to do this? Because they lie. People lie a lot. Oh, Yah told me to reveal this. Yah told me to say this. Oh, this person helped me reveal. Really? He did. How's that working out for you? Not well. It's not going to end well for any of these people. So Saul says, verse 22, go, I pray you, prepare yet and know, and see his place where his haunt is, and who hath seen him there, for it is told me that he deal very subtly. He's like, hey, okay, when you go, he's like, go, but now watch out now, because it's he's slippery, man. You got to be very careful. So when you go, you got to go sneaky, because he's sneaky. You're putting all these like negative things out there about him, and it's like, he's not even being sneaky. He's just running from you. He's not trying. He doesn't want to. This is something that's being forced upon him because of, obviously, Saul's behavior. So verse 23. See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides himself, And come yet again to me with the certainty, and I will go with you. And it shall come to pass, if he be in the land, that I will search him out throughout all the thousands of Judah. So interesting. Once again, one of those little glimpse moments of what happens to Hamashiach. When Hamashiach is born, right? Remember the Magi come to King Herod. And they're like, where's the one that's born king? And he's like, born king? And he asks the scribes, and he's like, somebody will be born king? He said, oh, absolutely. You know, Bethlehem, this is where he is. And he's like, oh, wait, what? Okay. Y'all go find him. And then come back and get me so I can worship him. Saul has that same wicked heart, right? So he tells the men, go find him. Don't let him know you found him, though. Like, seek him out, find out where he is, and then I'll do all the searching. I'm going to go find him. That same thing, that same pursuit. So you can see that motif and that picture being played out in David, where he is the one that's king, like Hamashiach was, right? And he's having to hide and ditch and dodge until it's time for him to become king. Patience. Okay, verse 24. And they arose and went to Ziph before Saul, but David and his men were in the wilderness of Moan, in the plain on the south of Yeshmon. And Saul also and his men went to seek him, and they told David, wherefore he came down into a rock and abode in the wilderness of Moan. And when Saul heard that, he pursued after David in the wilderness of Moan. So he's getting closer and closer and closer, right? It's interesting. I wrote a note. It says, your enemies will pray like they are righteous. Prayer means nothing when the heart is out of alignment with Yah and is driven by anger, jealousy, and hatred. Praise Yah that the prayers of our enemies have not been allowed to be put into effect. Praise Yah that he judges the prayers of our enemies and blocks out unrighteous judgment. Okay, so let's keep going. Verse 26. And Saul went on the side of the mountain, and David and his men on the side of the mountain. And David made haste to get away for fear of Saul. For Saul and his men compassed around David and his men to take them. Now pause there. I'm going to read you Psalm 35. David, at the same time, and it's something I'm going to ask Yosh about because it's very interesting. It seems like these Psalms, a lot of them that David wrote, are in here in order of his running from Saul. It's very interesting. So there's some in here that directly are written while he was on the run from Saul. Okay, so David, he says, plead my cause, O Yah, with them that strive with me. Fight against them that fight against me. Take hold of shield and buckler and stand up for mine help. Draw out also the spear and stop the way against them that persecute me. Say unto my soul, I am thy salvation. Let them be confounded and put to shame that seek after my soul. Let them be turned back and brought to confusion that devise my hurt. Let them be as chaff before the wind, and let the angel of Yahuwah chase them. It's very interesting. It starts off with the threshing floor, and in his psalm, he mentions them being chaff to the wind. That's the idea of taking what's left on the threshing floor and winnowing it or throwing it up in the wind, blowing that which is useless away. Okay. Verse 6, let their way be dark and slippery, and let the angel of Yahuwah persecute them. For without cause they have hid from me their net in a pit, which without cause they have digged for my soul. Let destruction come upon him at unawares, and let his net that he hath hid catch himself, in that very destruction let him fall. And my soul shall be joyful in Yahuwah, it shall rejoice in his salvation. All my bones shall say, Yahuwah, who is like unto thee, which deliverest the poor from him that is too strong for him, yea, the poor and the needy from him that spoileth him. False witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things I knew not. They rewarded me evil for good, to the spoiling of my soul. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. And I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into mine own bosom. I behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother, and I bowed down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother. But in my adversity, they rejoiced and gathered themselves together. Yea, they gathered themselves together against me, and I knew it not. They did tear me, and ceased not. With hypocritical mockers and feasts, they gnashed upon me with their teeth. Yahuwah, how long wilt thou look on? Rescue my soul from their destruction, my darling from the lions. I will give thee thanks in the great congregation, and I will praise thee among much people. Let not them that are mine enemies wrongfully rejoice over me, neither let them wink with the eye that hate me without a cause. For they speak not peace, but they devise deceitful matters against them that are quiet in the land. Yea, they open their mouth wide against me, and say, Aha, aha, our eye hath seen it. This thou hast seen, O Yahuwah, keep not silent. O Yahuwah, be not far from me. Stir up thyself, and awake to my judgment, even unto my cause, my Elohim and my Master. Judge me, O Yahuwah, my Elohim, according to thy righteousness, and let them not rejoice over me. Let them not say in their hearts, Aha, so would we have it. Let them not say, We have swallowed him up. Let them be ashamed and brought to confusion together that rejoice at mine hurt. Let them be clothed with shame and dishonor that magnify themselves against me. Let them shout for joy and be glad that favor my righteousness, my righteous cause. Yea, let them say continually, Let Yahuwah be magnified, which hath pleasure in the prosperity of his servant. And my tongue shall speak of thy righteousness, of thy praise all day long. Whew. Okay, so Saul's after him. That's David's mindset. It's not that he's not afraid. It's not that he's not confused. It's not that he's not hurt. It's none of these things. It's that Saul has purpose in his heart that he is not going to lay down. He's not going to stop. Oh, I know y'all rejected me and I know this, but I'm going to get David because David seems like the nucleus to all my problems, not knowing that he is his own problem. Okay, so verse 26 again. And Saul went on the side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. And David made haste to get away for fear of Saul, for Saul and his men compassed David and his men round about to take them. So David's saying that they're all around me. But there came a messenger unto Saul, saying, Haste thee and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. Wherefore Saul returned from pursuing after David, and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called the place Selah Hamalekoth. Literally, Yah calls a break. Right when it got hot, and literally David was getting ready to be taken in, Saul couldn't resist the clout. He was more concerned. Yah broke it. Saul was like, oh, let me go save Israel. Like, dude, you were in like hot pursuit getting ready to kill an innocent man. And then there's opportunity for you to do something, and then you're back to that, right? Wherefore, Saul returned from pursuing after David, and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called the place Selah Hamalekoth. And David went up from thence, and dwelt in the strongholds of En-gedi. Yeah, sometimes... we don't understand how he does things, why he does things, but being faithful. David didn't wither, he didn't break, because you know when the pressure gets tight, some people crack. And David's like, I'm not moving. I'm hiding. I'm not going out to fight. I'm not putting these men's lives in danger. I'm not doing it. And he trusted Yah. Literally seemed like to the moment of like, you could feel the men on David. And Yah comes and causes and stirs mischief with the Philistines and causes Saul to have to go back and fight. Could be also, this is me eisegeting again, Saul was never going to let David one up him, right? So David fought the Philistines, so Saul was like, nah, I got to go save people from the Philistines. It's my turn. So David goes into the strongholds of En-gedi. One of the things that I've been really reflecting on in being in a sheltered in place is all the places and things that I got to experience. I've been a lot of places, and Yah's opened up a lot of doors. And one of the things I have trouble doing sometimes is stopping and pausing and reflecting on those things. And so in being sheltered in place, you have a lot of time to reflect on all the places you've been able to go. And one of the places that I've been able to go, not only once but twice, was actually to En-gedi. And En-gedi is a very interesting place because it is in the middle of essentially a desert. It's in the mountains. It's hilly. It's rocky. And it's right above the Dead Sea, or the Salt Sea, as it's actually called. And so, in being able to go there, there is an oasis in En-gedi. And the oasis in Engedi still exists. It's not probably as big as it was, but water actually poured down, and there was a pool, and the remnants of that waterfall are still there. And I not only got to drink water from it, it's water that's fresh that you can drink, just straight out. And it's also, if you go up a little bit higher, there's like a bigger pool where you can stand as well. So I got to go there twice, once with a friend of mine that I traveled with to Israel the first time, and the second time I actually got to take my family came with me. It was my husband and my children, and they got to also experience that place. And so Yah had prepared an oasis, if you will, in the desert for David. So you had to endure all that pressure at that time. Saul leaves, and then Yah prepares a place for you to go to rest, to reflect, and to regather. And those places are so important when you come out of a lot of the traumatic things that David had come out of. And so Yah does that and prepares a place. We're going to read Psalm 18, and it's verse 17 through 33, and then we're going to wrap it up. If you get a chance, read the whole thing. But in the little footnote in the beginning, it says, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the servant of Yahuwah, who spake unto Yahuwah the words of this song, in the day that Yahuwah delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. And he said. And so go through and read the first part, because I think that'll be a really good place for you guys to meditate. But we're going to start at verse 17, Psalm 18, verse 17. It says, he delivered me from my strong enemy, and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but Yahuwah was my stay. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me, because he delighted in me. The Yahuwah rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of Yahuwah, and have not wickedly departed from my Elohim. For all his judgments were before me, and I did not put away his statutes from me. I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore hath Yahuwah recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight. With the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful, and with the upright man thou wilt show thyself upright. With the pure thou wilt show thyself pure, and with the froward thou wilt show thyself froward. For thou wilt save the afflicted people, but will bring down high looks. For thou wilt light my candle, Yahuwah my Elohim, will enlighten my darkness. For by thee I have run through a troop, and by my Elohim have I leapt over a wall. And for Elohim his way is perfect. The word of Yahuwah is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in him. For who is Elohim, save Yahuwah? Or who is the rock, save our Elohim? It is Elohim that girdeth me with strength, and maketh my way perfect. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and setteth me upon my high places. And so Engedi is a high place. Engedi is a place of refuge. And David is allowed to pause, to Selah, and to be encouraged, not only by his friend, but also by Yah and how he has delivered him. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. We're going to head over to Zoom through the Patreon and discuss some of the things with the people there. I want to hear what they have to say, or you all have to say, and the insight the Most High gave you. And then we're going to continue to rest on the Shabbat. Thank you so much. I hope that you all have a restful Shabbat, and if you don't join us in the Patreon, that you are renewed and refreshed. Shalom.